Moving on, we have seen how COVID-19 has contributed to the rapid growth of technology in order to adapt to the conditions in which we find ourselves. Companies have made online tools available to make work easily accessible for employees to work from home, and artificial intelligence has seen a rapid growth. But how has technology, and particularly big companies, contributed to the fight against this pandemic? Now, joining us to tell us more about this is data analyst at World Wide Worx. His name is Bryan Turner. Bryan, thank you so much for your time. Who would have thought in 2020 we'd be having discussions and interviews live on television using things like Skype and Zoom? Did you ever think that technology would be so advanced?
I didn't think it would be so advanced so quickly, but we definitely had the fire lit under us with the pandemic to advance in these technologies so rapidly.
Now, in your opinion, Bryan, how do you think technology can help this COVID-19 pandemic when it comes to testing and sharing data, etc.?
Having data so distributed is vital. So having data sets across different provinces and letting different provinces know, for example, how each sub-metro within these provinces are doing is vital in this time. And the technology is pretty much the only thing that can facilitate the spread of data and information so rapidly. So right now we're seeing, we saw the partnership between Vodacom and Samsung in helping our governments to do things like contact tracing as well as testing, and that's where it's really taken off.
Contact tracing is definitely a thing, but at the same time, when you talk about technology and network providers, it seems as though that we are sort of falling behind because we need to catch up with how the rest of the world sort of deals with connectivity issues, right?
Yes, and we can really take lessons from South Korea, and the only reason why a country like South Korea is so prepared at this point in time is because they had a coronavirus outbreak, a different type of coronavirus in 2015, where they had set up all these systems. Now, what's happening in the rest of the world, and South Africa included, is that the information technology has to be developed first. And the only reason why countries like South Korea are so prepared is because they've been prepared for pandemics before.
Now, let's talk about how retailers are also taking advantage of this technology or this different way of shopping. Are we going to be seeing a lot more things available online versus your usual walk into a store, fit on a pair of chinos, and then pay for it and go home?
There is an education gap in doing this. The COVID-19 lockdown has expedited this. But the thing is, consumers still want to go into store and look and feel and try on clothes because at the moment, because of different sizing issues, online shopping for clothing is perceived as a little bit inefficient because, let's say for shoe sizing, one shoe size might be different to another shoe size of another manufacturer. So those types of issues really do need to be ironed out and need to be streamlined to be successful to be online. But at the moment, consumers seem to be doing pretty well using online outlets like Superbalist and the like.
It seems as though us as consumers are also using social media to try and cope during this lockdown period. We've seen a rise in the likes of TikTok and Facebook live videos and Instagram live videos. My next question obviously is, is there going to be an end to this, or are we going to expect more social media platforms to just keep getting on board?
Social media platforms rise and fall all the time. So we in the early 2000s, we saw things like MySpace, and that kind of petered out when Facebook started taking over. And Facebook's got a steady set of products to stay on top with their Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook triangle of applications that keep them successful. And TikTok is a really nice entrance because it allows basically everybody to be seen in South Africa. So their algorithm really does optimize South African humor to be accepted by South Africans, so we can all cope with what we're going through all in the same boat almost online.
Does this mean we're going to see a decline in the conventional way of watching TV? I mean, Back in the day, you'd sit at 8 o'clock, for instance, and watch a local soapy with your family. But now, streaming services are allowing you to watch whatever, whenever, at whatever time you want to watch it. Does this mean we have to bow out to the conventional way of watching TV?
TV, at least in this country, we're still seeing a huge pattern of analog TV watching. So the state channels, the SABC channels, are still being watched quite heavily because internet access has still not reached the level of penetration where it needs to be to have almost a cannibalization of the traditional networks by streaming services, like we're seeing in the US. That can't really happen here because our infrastructure and pricing models just they just don't work for the typical South African.
What happens when it comes to things like online learning, especially for students? Is this a full-time possibility where in the next few years we could see children just learning purely online and then only going to school maybe to just write exams?
That could be a possibility, but that all rests in the pricing models of the data providers at the moment. The mobile networks need to find a way to make distance learning more accessible. But until then, the issue is the pricing of data, because in our research we found that South Africans have the equipment and have the hardware to do distance learning through smartphones, tablets, and computers. But the problem is the access cost is way too high for online learning to be feasible.
And what would the message be then to network providers out there, especially getting their accessibility to people in the rural areas, etc.? How would they, what would the model be for them to get into areas like that, to be able to allow people in disadvantaged communities to access the internet?
So what the network providers are dealing with now is they say that they need the spectrum where TV is being broadcast on to broadcast a mobile network or mobile data network frequency. So what is happening now is that mobile networks are saying, well, the traditional analog channels that everybody is very accustomed to need to be decommissioned in favor of mobile data, which that spectrum that TV is using at the moment can travel very far and can travel into the rural areas where they would need to have less towers, and they could drive down their costs, and then they would be able to provide cheaper data. Whether that necessarily translates into cheaper data, we'll have to see, but that's what the mobile network providers are saying at the moment.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. It's such a pleasure chatting about how technology is changing the game and how it's also affecting and helping the COVID-19 pandemic. So thank you so much for your time, Bryan. Really appreciate it. That was Bryan Turner, data analyst at World Wide Worx, telling us about the contribution that technology companies can make towards dealing and fighting the coronavirus pandemic.